Welcome to INCRadio South Central State Satellite Studio. I'm your host for today, Brother Nathan Russell, coming to you live from Fort Worth, Texas. It is nice and cool and sunny outside after about a week of rain, so enjoy the nice weather that we have. Now, today's episode is not about myself or the weather, but we are joined by our panelist who's from Fort Worth, same as I am, but currently she's in California. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Sister Arnie. I am from the local congregation of Fort Worth, but like Brother Nathaniel said, I am here in California visiting family.
Yes, thanks for joining. And today's topic, we are going to continue in a series that we've covered in the past before, and that is career journeys. Now, the reason why we like to talk about career journeys and not just careers in itself is because the journey is often interesting. As we've interviewed brethren in the past, Brother Ty and Sister Charmaine, very unconventional paths. And so, knowing that where you start and where you end may not be ideal, may not be your original plans. It's all fine and dandy because I think we'd be surprised that for the majority of us, our career paths are not conventional. So before we get started though with today's discussion, I'm going to drop our question of the day into the chat. So please answer it, or if you want to chime in with your comments throughout the show, we'll take pauses here and there, and we'll read out your comments live on air. And the question of the day is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay. So if you want to answer that from when you were a child or even now, go ahead and drop that into our chat. So let's start with you, Sister Arnie. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Okay, so when I was younger, my I wanted to be a flight attendant. That was my main thing. But then when I went to school, I wanted to become a lawyer. And by the time I finished high school in the air aviation industry, they had a height minimum for flight attendants. And I did not meet that height minimum, so I couldn't go to be a flight attendant. And then so I was like, okay, I just want to be a lawyer. I just want to be a lawyer. But back then, I guess they said that, lawyers didn't have a good reputation, where they said, why do you want to be a lawyer if you defend criminals and they go to jail or whatever, they're going to come after you. So I was highly discouraged by my parents to become a lawyer. So I had to give up those two dreams.
So was that in high school when you were thinking about being a lawyer?
Yes, I was in high school. I took a political science class and I totally loved it. Had debates in classes and I did really well. Where even if I wasn't completely right, people couldn't defend themselves against what I was saying, and sometimes they would actually believe what I'm saying, even though it wasn't true.
Sounds about right for political science, right?
Yeah, and so that's the thing. I really wanted to be a lawyer, but when I told my parents, I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna do law and everything," and they're like, "No, you can't. You can't be defending criminals, or if you send criminals to jail, they're gonna come after you." So they did not approve. And back then, you had to um, take into consideration what your parents said. And so I kind of swayed away from law, even though that's what I've always wanted to do.
See, my strength in high school was always like math. I was always really good at math. Not so much science. Well, some science, like if it was math based science, I was okay in. But when I took anatomy, I think I got sick every day in that class. So that was not for me. But yeah, my parents really pushed me into like engineering. And honestly, I was like, okay, I'm good at math. I guess I'll do it. But it wasn't really my thing. So uh, was that kind of the same thing with law? Your parents kind of dissuaded you, wanted to push you in a different direction.
Yes. So just like you, I was awesome in math. I loved math. It didn't matter what the problems were, I could solve it. And I did love science. And unlike you, I loved anatomy. I loved dissecting things. So, we got to dissect frogs, cow's heart, eyeballs. We even got to do like a little piglet. And it was funny because I was in an honors class, and in our school a lot of the athletes had to have good grades, so I had a lot of the athletes in my class, a lot of the football players. And when we're dissecting things, when you have that little piglet, you got to wrap it around in a wet paper towel, so that it doesn't go bad or it doesn't smell when you're dissecting it. And so, of course, with football players, oh look, here's pigskin, and they would wrap that little piglet around in a paper towel and throw it like a football. But yes, and because I was good in science and in math, my parents actually wanted me to be a doctor. But, I admire the medical field, but that just wasn't something that interested me. So I didn't pursue that even though that's what they want.
All right, we're gonna talk about what happened after high school, but real quick, we'll drop into the comments. So, Sister Melanie, she's greeting us, also from Fort Worth. She says, "Hi, Sister Arnie. How's the weather in Cali? How is the weather in Cali right now?"
It's cold. I mean, it's not freezing like it was in Texas, but it's still 60s about, kind of overcast. But yeah, not a sunny day today yet.
Nice. All right, let's see. We also have our brother who goes by the name Feagle Brave Bear. He's from Memphis. He's greeting us. Good afternoon. And Sister Melanie said she wanted to be a corporate lawyer, just like her dad. That's interesting that she mentioned that, like her dad, because at one point, because my dad was in the military, and when I hit about my 30s, like it's kind of weird. I just randomly decided I'm going to join the military, and I dropped like a ton of weight and I applied, but ultimately that didn't happen. But let's go back to you though. So you graduate from high school. What was going on in your mind? Like, what direction did you want to go?
So after graduating, I wanted to, like most teenagers, explore the world. And so I decided to pack up and go to San Diego for a few years. And instead of going to school, I actually got a job working as an executive assistant for a corporation down in San Diego. And I enjoyed working because then I would have money that would give me a chance to travel. So I did that for a few years. And then after that, I decided, you know what? I think it's time for me to actually go to college now. I think back then when, you're being forced to do things as a rebellious teenager, you don't want to listen. And so everyone was bugging me, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. And, I knew I was going to eventually. I just didn't want to do it at that point. So I did have a few jobs here and there. I worked for Toys R Us, which was the coolest job in the world. You got to play with all the toys while you're working. But so I worked for a bit before I actually decided to go to college. So like I said, I lived in San Diego for a few years before coming back to Sacramento to go to school.
Just a quick note: we aren't sponsored by, or do we sponsor Toys R Us? But I don't even think they're around anymore, are they?
No, they're not.
Many fond memories. I think a lot of the companies I work for in the past are no longer there. So, about how long was that gap between high school and you actually entering college?
It was about 6 years, possibly. Well, I also decided to move to the Philippines for 2 years. And
Oh,
so
okay.
while I was there, at the time, my grandmother like kind of raised us when we were younger. And so she would always talk to me, oh, here in the Philippines, we did this, and so I wanted to see what it's like. So I lived in the Philippines for about 2 years. And while I was there, I had no idea what I was going to do. So then I finally just enrolled at New Era University. I went to school there for 2 years. And then I got really sick, and the doctor says, you need to go back to the States. So I had to come back.
Did you accidentally drink the water?
Well, they told me a myth that if you boil the water, everything will be great. But apparently, there's amoebas that could survive the boiling water. And so, even though you boil the water and you drink it, sometimes it could come back alive. And that's kind of what happened. So,
I say that because every time I go to the Philippines, I feel like I have to go back to the States because it gets really bad when I get sick. What was your I'm curious. So, what was your primary study when you were in the Philippines?
so while I was there, I actually went and studied business administration. And after doing that, I noticed that they had communication classes also, but business administration was what the school was known for. So that is what I went to school for. And then during my time in business administration, there would be different competitions. And a lot of it would be having to do with public speaking. And I don't know if I won only because I spoke English well, or if I actually really did have a good presence in public speaking. So I would enter a lot of the competitions, and I would win. So I just thought that was really cool.
Thinking about that time gap, because you said about 6 years from when you graduated till you went to college. I think I was like 6 days from when I graduated, jumped right into summer school. I was like, I wanted to get done right away. I'm just curious, like, because there's like two ways of thinking. It's like I need to go to college immediately after high school, or I need to, learn about the world first and then go to college. And I could kind of see both ways because when I immediately jumped into college, I don't think like my mind, being like an 18-year-old, wasn't fully understanding of like what I was getting into, not fully matured. Typically, the parts of maturity in your brain don't fully develop until you're about 23. I just wanted to get your thoughts though, between like delaying college or going right away in. Do you have any regrets, delaying it? Or just what general advice would you give to people who think about it?
Honestly, I when I was living life at the time, I didn't really think about it. And like I said, when I went to the Philippines is when I really had nothing to do. And I said, oh, maybe now's a good time to go back to school. And so that's what I did. I went back to school. Thinking about it now, I actually don't regret that decision because when, everyone was bugging me to go to college, I felt like it wasn't my choice. And with some youth, they want to have some control of their life, and so I was, and plus, when I was going to go to college right after high school, I wasn't allowed to leave home. So I couldn't go to the colleges I wanted to. And I did not want to go to college in Sacramento. So I think that's why I ended up not going to school right away. And also, I couldn't pursue the the degree I wanted. So, and I think that's what stopped me from going to college. And then after a while, like you said, once I got older and I realized, hey, I do want to go to college and everything. And I think being more mature actually helped me appreciate college, and it kept me focused. And also for me, since I was paying for college on my own in California, if you're a certain age, you get a lot of scholarships and grants. So my college tuition was pretty much paid for. The only thing I ever took out loans for, anything was that was because I went to school in Southern California and I needed a place to live. So I took out a loan so that I could have my apartment.
All right. So now, did you go to college 2 years or did you do the full four?
So when I went to school in the Philippines, like I said, it was 2 years. They transferred over some of the my credits, but they couldn't transfer it all. So then I did junior college for an additional year, and then after that, I transferred over to the university for the other 2 years. So I did do the whole 4 years. Got my
Okay.
bachelor's in communication.
I did similar. I also did junior college and then university. So, and looking back now, I have no regrets about that at all. I mean, I highly recommend it. Your
Mhm,
first 2 years in college are pretty much the same everywhere. Doesn't really start to get more in depth or into a particular field until your last 2 years.
mhm.
So yeah, I'm glad that there are others though who also took that route because college is expensive.
It is, especially now. My nephew's in college, and just everything he has to pay for alone is crazy. And I wouldn't have been able to do that, on my own if I had gone straight to a 4 year university. So,
Right. Okay, so you graduate. What was ultimately your major that you graduated in? Was it the business?
no, so I got my bachelor's of arts in communications with a emphasis in public relations.
Oh, okay. And then, so where did you go after that? After
So
college?
after college, like I said, I went to college down in Southern California, and I ended up loving the weather there. So I would do anything to find a job there, which I did. I had an internship at a public relations firm. And so I stayed on with them for a bit. And then after that, I did public relations for a school district. So I got to do all the promotional items. Um, the only thing I didn't like about public relations, it's a 24/7 job, because if something happens, in the middle of the night, they may have to call you, and it was also weekends. And so that kind of hindered me from doing the things that, with like the Kadiwas or doing different events. And so I pursued a different path, and I ended up going into medical sales.
Medical sales. Okay. Still in Southern California?
Still in Southern California, yes. I stayed there for about 15 years before I finally left.
So what was medical sales? Can you describe that?
Sure. So I was working for a company that was based out of Kansas City, and it was a medical equipment company that made equipment for bariatric customers. So those are people who are over 250 pounds. So a lot of the hospitals, the grade of beds that they have couldn't hold more than 250 pounds. So if you had people who were coming in that was 500 pounds, those beds would break. So our company made wheelchairs, beds, and all that stuff for the larger patients. And so I was going hospital to hospital, letting them know what we had. I was doing conventions. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so what about after that? I know we're not yet at your current career. So what happened after the medical
So then
sales?
after that, the company decided to downsize, and so I got laid off. So for 2 years, I saved up enough money that I didn't have to work. So for 2 years, I honestly devoted 2 years of my whole life volunteering in the district. And that's all I did every single day, 8 hours a day. I was at the district office helping out with all the different district activities, doing different things. And then when money, money finally ran out, I had to go get another job. And so that's when I was doing marketing for a commercial real estate firm.
Commercial real estate. Okay, I worked in commercial real estate briefly, but just on the data side. I'm curious. So what district was that? It probably doesn't exist anymore. But what was it?
That was Southern California at the time, which is now LA County, Orange County, San Diego. I think those are the 3 districts now, but that used to all be Southern California. So went from, Delano all the way down to San Diego.
All right. So now describe this next job that you had.
Yeah, so I was doing the commercial real estate, and I was a companion for my uncle for the airlines. And so that meant I got to go fly anywhere I wanted domestically, practically for free. And then international, I would only pay taxes. And then he told me, he goes, "Hey, I got to put somebody else as my registered companion, so I got to take you off." And I'm like, "No, I'm loving this whole flying thing and going places." And so he goes, "Well, we are hiring in Sacramento." And so that was one thing I had to decide if I wanted to go back to Northern California, quit my, good paying job to work for the airlines. And so I got the interview, got hired, and I've enjoyed the work. Like I said, I don't get paid as much as I did in my previous jobs, but the benefits of the different things I get to do with my job, I think it's awesome.
So does that take us to where we are now with your career?
Yes. So I started off as an agent in Sacramento. And when you work at a smaller station, there's not much you can do except for being an agent and maybe a supervisor, which I ended up doing. And my boss actually moved to Dallas Fort Worth Airport. And she called me and she says, "Hey, come out here for a day. Check it out. I think you'd like it here." And I said, "Oh, no, never will I live in Texas. That's like not going to happen because, born and raised in California, I'm not leaving." And I ended up doing a day trip to Texas, and she took me around the airport. And once I got to see the tower, which is the place that controls everything that happens at the airport, I was hooked. And so I had put in a transfer. And 6 months later, they called me and said, "Hey, would you like to come to Texas and work at the airport here?" And I still was hesitant, but I took the leap of faith and decided, sure, why not?
Okay, so there's two airports. There's Love Field and DFW. Which one is it?
I'm at DFW, the
DFW.
bigger airport. Yes.
Yeah, no kidding. Bigger airport.
It's like a
It's
whole
like,
city.
what is it, like 5 airports in one?
Yeah, pretty much. And then they're building another terminal. And it's pretty cool because they've got like high-end shops there, they've got restaurants, they've got 7-Eleven. So anybody who wants a Slurpee can have a Slurpee at the airport.
Oh, that's great. I haven't been to that airport probably in a few years. Mostly like traveling by vehicle. But you mentioned the tower. So do you work up in the tower?
No, I don't. Well, I did while I was working at the airport. There is a position that allows you to work up there. So I did that on the customer service side, which is, we were the ones who would request to hold flights if needed. So I got to do that for a bit. And then I also did, as my specialty was in international departures. So I took care of all the flights that went to Europe, to Asia, South America, things like that, Australia, New Zealand.
See, just real quick, we have a few more comments. We are greeted. Hi, SES. from our sister Tony Rose Valenzuela. She, of course, is part of the Northern Midwest Satellite Studio, which comes on in a few hours, I believe. And she says she wanted to be an astronaut and then a lawyer and then an author. So I think everybody's kind of bouncing around with their careers. But I'm curious about the connection between college and your current career. Like, I know for me, I ultimately graduated with a degree in math, and even though I work in data and we do deal with math, almost none of that math translated over into what I do now. It's basically like, how hard can you make an algebra problem?
Mhm.
But for you, because it was communications, I believe that would be pretty broad of a degree. But how well did that transition into your current role?
So when I first started with the airport, it had nothing to do with communications. But now because I'm an instructor at our headquarters, and so that one I think really helps out, being able to speak in public, also knowing how to deal with different types of audiences and knowing how to try to get their attention. So I think my degree actually helps me now. But my previous jobs, not as much. But it's not like what I really majored in. Like I said, my emphasis was on public relations, which is putting out fires and things like that. So I don't do that aspect of communications. But I think just being an instructor and a facilitator, I think that being able to communicate in public is something that my degree is useful for.
I guess we'll close out with maybe some advice you would give the youth, because you have a very unique experience going from school to your current career. What advice would you give to our youth as they try to look for a career they might want to pursue?
I think it's really important to find something that you enjoy doing. All of my previous jobs, I would wake up and I'm like, "Ooh, it's time to go to work again." But this one, when I wake up and I go to work, I don't feel like I'm going to work. I'm actually enjoying what I do. And sometimes I feel guilty that I'm getting paid to have fun. And I think that's what you should do whenever you're looking for a career. And sometimes it might not be the norm. When I first was going to work for the airlines, I know a lot of people didn't like, and they said you're wasting your degree to go work, at the airport. But now that they get to see all the different places I get to go to, all the different things I get to do, now it's not so bad. But sometimes, it's not the norm, and sometimes it's not what everybody expects from you. Because, like I said, I was expected to be a doctor, or I was expected to work for the government like all my siblings do. And so it was frowned upon that I did not want an office job. But sometimes you do have to pursue your own goals, but do it in a respectful way. I could have just flat out said, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to, but I did it in a way where, okay, they wanted me to go to college, so I still went to college, but I went to college on my terms and to study what I wanted to study. But you have to do something that you enjoy doing, because the worst thing to do is spend 8 hours of your day at a place that you don't like.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's very good advice to give. And that's something I think about myself as my son is growing up, because he's currently in middle school. And I'm not thinking, he necessarily has to go to college. It's like you said, because I know that was really pushed on like Gen X and millennials, like, go to college, okay, you're going to get a job and then you'll be happy and you'll get paid. And I think a lot of us are finding out, like, okay, that was not the case at all. That is not how the world works. So thinking about my son now, and having talks with my wife, it's like, okay, we don't have to push him into college. If it's something he wants to do, we'll support him, but he has to have some kind of vision in mind, what he wants to do. He has to be productive. Is there anything else you'd like to close out with?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, know what your goals are and aspire for it, and nothing is out of reach. With my job now, I'm so fortunate because I get to take my nephews everywhere around the world, which is something they probably not would not have experienced if it wasn't for the job that I had. And so, they get excited that they get to see things. But do what you love, because then it just makes life so much easier, and it's not actually a job. And the other thing is, for parents, like, I understand you want your child to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, whatever it is, but sometimes that, they do have to pursue their goals, because I have friends who went to nursing school and they hate it. It's not them, but that's what they were told they had to do. But, be open to different things, because there's a lot of different things in the world that people can do that's not necessarily in the medical field, engineering field, that can make them successful.
Any final shout outs you'd like to give?
No, just hey.
Yeah, shout out to our district, I guess, for connecting me with you. I guess I'll shout out Brother Christian for that. Uh, getting you to help come on today. So yeah, I had a great conversation with you here today. I think we learned a lot, and hopefully that a lot of our youth can take a lot from this. That your career path may not follow conventional ways to a rewarding career. So just keep that in mind. I would like to thank of course, our district CFO overseer, Brother Christian Agron, our assistant district minister, Brother Gilbert Anachete, our district minister, Brother Andre B. Silva, our executive producer, Brother Emmanuel Ndaya, our station manager, Brother Arnel Solano, our CFO coordinator and SEPC president, Brother Angelo Arano V. Manalo, and of course, our executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. So be sure to tune in to INC Radio South Central State's next Saturday. It's daylight savings time, by the way. That's going to happen overnight. So be sure to spring forward your clocks. Otherwise, you're going to be late. Is that how that works? It's like you'd be late 1 hour.
Yes.
All right. So you don't want to be super late, especially since worship services be tomorrow for Fort Worth. And stay tuned to INC Radio Latin America coming up next.